Jesse,
Hey, Stu.
how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you. Thanks for being here. Let me give you a quick introduction, and then I'll hand it over to you to introduce Basic.Space. So Jesse Lee's the founder and CEO of DFM, a diversified media group that owns and operates Basic.Space. Basic.Space is a curated marketplace that provides access to exclusive products and unique experiences from the iconoclasts of tomorrow. He also runs Westwood, a content and creative agency, as well as publishing Mirage magazine. In this session, we'll explore a question that's critical to the success of any brand or marketer. We'll have Jesse share his take on the importance of access to authenticity. Thank you, Jesse, and the floor is yours.
Cool. So, as you all know, we're here to share essentially how to reach, engage, and sell consumers in the new normal, right? And in many ways, the pandemic and the social unrest related to inequality, to us are just accelerants towards the future, right? And hopefully a better future. I think on the business front, right, it exposes kind of some of the weaknesses one might have, but in some ways it can strengthen the positions for others. And, we hope that we can stay ahead of the pack and continue to solve some of these problems and challenges and evolve as a market leader. And I think ultimately for us, one of the things that we talk about quite a bit internally is how insight plus innovation oftentimes can lead to impact, right? Which you can value as sort of creating value for our stakeholders in the community. So for us, like the way I wanted to kind of present the next few slides is less about our sort of UI, UX and tech capabilities, although we'll cover that at the end, but kind of just walk through kind of like the backstory of how Basic.Space came about. And then hopefully towards the end of it, all of it will connect. So this was photoshopped by somebody on our team. But just to go even way back, I think what's important for us is that all of us on the team have a passion for discovery, right? And then for me, it dates back to middle school and high school when, I was obsessed with sports. But besides playing it, even documenting and sort of discovering who's, new and next in the scene of like the future NBA All-Star, right? But I wasn't just paying attention to college players or NBA players. We were even going back all the way to my friends and I, high school players. So even the likes of Kobe Bryant, long before he became an NBA All-Star and a legend and rest in peace. A lot of us were tracking Kobe from afar, even when he was 16 and 17, right? And I think what that kind of shows for a lot of us, on the team too, is that it's not just a fundamental business model or even a job or even a passion, but we do consider discovery in the form of authenticity is I would say an obsession. If you speed back up to then the high school years and college years, right? From a personal level, it was always about discovering what's new and next in music, right? So even in my late teens and going into college, it wasn't just about playing what's popular on the radio, but it's finding what's new and next. And ultimately that led to discovering a very sort of, I guess, like underground form called drum and bass jungle out of the UK, London. So it became all about obsessing over finding a new genre and a new scene that may be, foreign to a lot of people on the mass, right? But then what happened by the time then I got to college, so to speak, is sort of how the blogging started, right? So ultimately we launched, my friend and I, a college friend and I, who still helps us with the company, Matt, we started a blog called dubfrequency.com. And it was ultimately about, again, finding the music that we couldn't hear and find on college campus, throwing parties and club nights that our friends could come to. And again, discovering, something that wasn't necessarily available on mainstream TV and radio, right? And this was also like the early days of Napster. So everybody was downloading music and mixtapes and different artists from across the globe that weren't readily accessible until Napster came along. So this is where kind of, I can get into more the business side of it. So eventually dubfrequency.com became an agency. So in the early 2010s, we started a company called DFM. short for dub frequency media. And some of you may recognize most of the people here, maybe not, but essentially this shows sort of our ecosystem that we've been able to build over the past decade plus, right? So everything from throwing parties at New York Fashion Week or Paris Fashion Week, or all the way to connecting dots for an esports team, 100 Thieves and Drake, down to having our own Grammy events with artists, friends of ours, right, who we helped discover early on through the blog stage, who are now headlining festivals, whether that's a Childish Gambino or Diplo, right? So I think one of the things that we always sort of hung our hat on is our ability and genuine interest to discover talent and what's happening within our community, and putting our resources behind to help that become more mainstream. And eventually what happened then is the brand started sponsoring a lot of our content and events. So whether it's at South by Southwest or Coachella or Art Basel, eventually we started creating content for a lot of brands. And we were fortunate enough to, work with everyone from Instagram and Impossible Foods to the likes of Nike and Gucci, right? And however, what happened after a few years of running the agency side, quickly kind of realized that we sort of forgot to do what we had initially set out to do, which is to have a platform to discover up and coming talent and, again, push them through, right? So we launched Westwood a few years into the agency side, because again, we love connecting brands with talent, but we also wanted to have an editorial voice where we can continue to put forth the people and the trends that we believe in. So as we matured as a company, what started as sort of more music and fashion evolved into technology, art, food, and beyond. And we were fortunate enough to work with brands across multiple sort of industries, whether it's tech, food, and hospitality, fashion, retail, luxury, and even fintech, the likes of Square and Cash App. So that's sort of like how we kind of built both, I guess, the ecosystem and what we call sort of the trust with the talent side and the brand side. And that's how we eventually got to Basic.Space. So a few years ago, again, same thing as before, my friends and I started thinking about and talking about how, because we were on the early sort of part of the quote unquote influencer marketing, and while many of our friends were considered influencers and getting paid to post on social, Instagram and all that, realized that, it's just another form of paid advertising, right? And then I think for us, what we always cared about the most is, are we delivering or being delivered the message in an authentic form? And as much as people were, calling it influencer marketing in the means of, being organic and not paid, it's quite the opposite, right? So we started seeing friends of ours, posting content that they didn't believe in. And eventually our clients on the brand side realized too that the talent that they were paying to post, wasn't the authentic approach that the customers would appreciate, because customers are smart, consumers know the difference between what's real and fake. So for us, we wanted them to build a separate platform where we felt like we can have our own unique POV, showcase and celebrate the talent that we believe in, and connect those dots, right? So essentially we launched what we call, I guess, the beta or MVP version of Basic.Space 2 years ago, really as a curated marketplace that can provide access to these exclusive products and what we call unique experiences. And I'll get into more of sort of the IRL versus URL experiences, but ultimately for us, whether you experience something digitally or in real life, they're all within the same, right? And I think that's the important thing that we learned, especially in the last couple of years of iterating Basic.Space, is that the best case scenario for a true experience with whether it's retail or consumption is that it has to be all within one, right? I think the second you start distinguishing between what's supposed to be an in-person or in real life experience versus what you do on your phone and digitally is, I think, where you make the mistake. And I think for us, we were able to slow grow the first part of it, the quote unquote 1.0 that's currently up. And, even pre-COVID, we were fortunate enough to start working on a plan and new features and a completely new UI Internally we're calling it 2.0, but when we launched Basic.Space, quote unquote 2.0, to us, that's the real version of our platform. And kind of the next natural step for us was that, how do we connect our ecosystem, right, more effectively, so that it's not just about selling pre-owned products from our exclusive, our invite-only seller list, but also connecting brands and also leveraging our content arm, and also deploying actually capital into some of these collaborations, so we can produce and sell exclusive products within Basic.Space, right? So we always look to Westwood as our content marketing arm, Basic.Space, our commerce platform, obviously the consumer model, and then we're even going to start investing in specific projects and seller partners of ours through Select to create exclusive products and additional revenue streams that will again be sold through Basic.Space. So the last sort of or 2 slides left, but I think ultimately why we chose even the subject matter for this talk, so to speak, about having access to authenticity was pretty simple. As again, regardless of a pandemic or recession, our belief is that if you have true understanding of your audience, and to us, we're the audience, I think building different features and adapting to the needs of your consumer becomes much easier, right? So ultimately what all of us want to gain from as a business model is the trust of our customers, right? And to us, the most important part of winning the trust is through authenticity, which grants you access, which then again provides you with that trust, right? So trust is what leads to conversion of sales, retention, obviously then more revenue, and continuously, being able to grow that. And then I think for us, that's why, we started this presentation with some of the slides, including, our sort of what we call obsession over discovery and believing in what we believe in and who we believe in, which are our sellers on Basic.Space, right? So if you go on the platform, you might recognize some of the sellers, but out of the 100 or so sellers, I would say half of them are still considered up and coming talent or creatives. But we're also banking on the fact that in a couple of years, they might be household names, right? So because we have that track record and the trust factor with the talent side, as well as the brand side, we feel great about sort of our moats and our ability to continue to iterate and improve and add new features, so to speak, to get to the next step. So then the final slide is actually what we're doing on Basic.Space. So without going too much into detail, because even what I'm sharing here is not out yet, and we're making final tweaks to our product. What we're excited about for 2.0, which we'll look to launch in 2 months, is that it combines everything that we've learned over the last 2 years of building Basic.Space, which again goes back to how do we combine IRL experience into URL experience, but make that seamless. At the same time, how do we maintain our authenticity and our approach to that partnership with our sellers and brands, right? So this is a perfect example of somebody that, we'll hopefully be working with. It's again, I'm sharing some stuff that's not 100% live yet, but Harmony Korman, is a respected director, artist, multi-hyphenate. To us, he kind of represents the perfect seller because he's not only a film director, writer, screenplay, all that, but is an accomplished artist, rep by the Gagosian, and still also has his hands in on, like some of the cool Supreme projects. So it's sort of an ideal creative who's a multi-hyphenate, who touches on the high and low effects. So while he shoots completely random independent films, he also shoots a beautiful campaign for Gucci, right? So the way that we're going to roll out the next round of sort of Basic.Space is that not only are we onboarding, more sellers and launching brand partnerships through those sellers, we're creating, a live stream digital experience, or what, we're still playing around with the name, but where you can truly capture the essence of that seller, and we'll be able to sell products, whether it's a mix of pre-owned and brand partnerships, and perhaps we even collaborate and produce new products with that seller. And again, from the consumer point of view, right, you're getting exclusive products and a unique experience still through the platform, but most importantly, you're getting it from an authentic approach, right? So for us, that's something that we own. It's not a technical IP, because I know there are other guests and companies out here who have amazing, products and visions for what they're doing, but our vision is completely unique to us, right? And our ecosystem is something that can't be replicated. So regardless of how many more features we add and the direction we take the platform, we feel confident that through our access to authenticity, we're always going to be able to continue to improve, iterate, and sort of be maybe not a full step out of the curve, but at least half a step ahead, for our consumers. Because again, it goes back to the fact that we're the consumers, we know what we want, and we're always going to make sure to continue to build around our principles.
Jesse, thank you. A couple of questions before we open it up to the audience. So in terms of authenticity, is the key kind of driver authenticity relying on your network of sellers to choose what brands you engage with? And so, if you look on Basic.Space 1.0 or soon on 2.0, the products there are there because Aaron Preston chose one of those products to be there, and you didn't put it on there because of other reasons. Is that sort of what underpins authenticity?
Yeah. So what drives it? Yeah, there's a situation in which there's a marketplace between both the brand and the seller too, right? Where they'll connect, but it does start with the talent, right? Because what we're saying is that we curate the talent, invite our friends to be part of the community, and they decide what to sell, right? So some people have actually even sold real life experiences through us at the end of last year, and obviously with COVID, that's on hold. But then some sellers, predominantly sell their pre-owned items, right? Because they might have a closet full of, hundreds of items that they have that they're trying to offload. So what's unique for us is, I think, in some ways it can come off a little bit convoluted because there are a lot of offerings. But the simplest way to look at it is that we work with the seller as a partner, and we'll either sell or co-produce things that they want to do. And then the brands come and supplement or can be part of that experience or the partnership, right? So what we're excited about for 2.0 is that we have some very well-known luxury brands and unique brands that have not really been in this space that we're going to be able to pair with, again, our connections through the talent and become sort of a three-way partner, right? So the brand's happy because they don't have to spend the money up front to market it. The talent's happy because they get to actually take a bigger chunk on the back end, right? So we show a model in which everybody makes money, right? The brand gets their wholesale price. The seller can make, a substantial percentage on the back end. And then we're getting paid for connecting those dots, making sure the customer service is perfect. We handle all the fulfillment in-house. The other thing that's important to us is that from the get-go, we always maintain that we wanted to control the entire user experience. So not just to having the platform, but fulfillment center, customer service, payment systems, everything is completely proprietary. And we have our own team that handle all of that, right? Because we've seen a lot of, again, pain points from our sellers who may have another platform they use to sell, but then they don't get to interact with the clients or customers directly, right? So we handle all of that for our sellers and brands, which is also why it has to be bespoke. And we're not going to just have anyone sell. It has to be talent and brands we have a relationship with. So there's a trust factor.
And then if brands were interested in working with Basic.Space, what's the prototypical brand you work with? I mean fashion, apparel, you mentioned luxury. Of course, experiences, could mean whatever, your partner wants them to mean, but who's the right kind of fit if, people in the audience want to.
The best way to look at it, right, is our core audience at the end of the day, even with, the data we have now, it's 85% is going to range in that late Gen Z to younger side of Gen X, right? So 25 to maybe early 40s. And ultimately, I think our audience is a type of customer who wants to be slightly ahead of the curve on what's happening, right? So it's not just that they have to be luxury fashion. We're even talks with a phone company, right? Or there are other products outside of fashion that may be direct to consumer right now and don't have the retail partner that they traditionally had. So we come in as a solution for that too, because ultimately it's half of it is marketing and the other half is commerce, right? So it doesn't matter what the product is, we may be able to find the solution for the brand to get the product in front of the right audience by pairing it with the right seller. And speaking of which, we're onboarding a professional basketball player. We have James Beard nominated chefs. We have actors and directors. So it kind of ranges even in sort of the scope of who we work with. But I would say ultimately we have a very targeted audience, right? And it's not necessarily for everyone. And the way that we want to scale the business isn't through to attract everybody. It's more so that we want to go in deeper, build a deeper relationship with a certain amount of people, or what we consider to be early adopters, right? Because at the end of the day, that's how you can still generate revenue and have consistency.
Yeah, the riches are in the niches. So if there are any other questions,
your audience generates 80% of revenue, right? So
yeah. If you can, if any other questions, you can meet Jesse over in the sessions. That's the breakout session over to the left. And then Jesse will solicit interest from our attendees and share that with you at the end of the conference. And so very much appreciate your time and introducing us to Basic.Space. And yeah, thanks for the time and have a great afternoon.
Thanks, Stu. Talk soon.
Awesome.